Hey everybody, I'm Jay Scherr with Jay Scherr Business Consulting. We help entrepreneurs, business owners, and other leaders maximize their potential, build rock solid foundations for their businesses, and create more freedom in their lives. And you've joined Business Minds Coffee Chat. Bob Burg, author of The Go-Giver and a past guest of this show, said, networking is simply the cultivating of mutually beneficial, give and take, win-win relationships. It works best, however, when emphasizing the give part. Well, on today's episode, we're going to talk about networking and building meaningful relationships, developing confidence and overcoming the fear of networking, the secrets of master networkers, how to meet 100 people, and more. My guest is an investor, advisor, author, TEDx speaker, and for 30 years, she was a managing director at General Atlantic, a global growth equity firm. Before joining General Atlantic, she worked as a consultant at Bain Company. She's a graduate of Dartmouth College and earned an MBA from Harvard Business School. Please welcome the woman who's providing us the networking toolkit for career and life success, Pat Hedley. Pat, it is so great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you, Jay, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
As am I. I know this is going to be a great conversation, and this is just one of those topics that personally I love for a multitude of reasons. Number one, because I struggled with it for so many years, but also because it is so relevant, so timely, and can help so many people. And that's certainly one of the things that we love to do on this show. So I thought a good starting point for us to dive into the conversation would be you've written a book. We're going to talk about a different kind of book here for a moment. If you were writing your autobiography, what would the title of that book be based on your years of experience, your life as you look over it to this point? What would a good title of that book be?
Uh, I think a good title for my life would be Curiosity Drives You.
I like it. Okay, so let's do a little digging there. So curiosity drives you. So give us an example of maybe an early story from your life where curiosity really first started to become something that you were paying attention to. And tell us a little bit of that story, if you will.
Sure. The earliest memory I have of, identifying some level of curiosity was actually when I was a young child. I was a big reader. I was fascinated by books. I was amazed to discover our local library where they had so many books. And very interestingly, I was introverted as a young person. But one of the things I realized much later in life, in fact, in the last several years, is that what made networking accessible to me as an introvert was this curiosity. And I learned over the course of my life that I found it interesting to put myself in situations where I could learn, where I could satisfy this curiosity honestly about almost any topic. And I think that's what allowed me to, continue my education, both in school and then in college and beyond. That's what interested me in the job type of career that I decided to pursue because there was such a steep learning curve in each of those. And honestly, it continues today. I mean, I think innately I somehow had a growth mindset and this belief that you could learn and it was okay to try new things, even if you're not good at it at the beginning. I don't fear failure. And I think that probably came from Again, my parents were immigrants. They came to this country with no wealth. They came to this country without knowing the language, and nonetheless, they tried new things. My mom was an entrepreneur. I grew up with someone who ran her own business in the 60s and 70s when women without much of no college education and a strong accent weren't the typical kind of entrepreneur that you meet. But I think there were so many things that my mom taught me, but probably the single most important thing was to be fearless, that there wasn't much to be afraid of because she never articulated this, and I can only say this in retrospect, but what was the downside? I mean, if you didn't try, you weren't going to succeed. So you might as well put yourself out there. You might as well do things that might make you uncomfortable, and don't say no to yourself. Just get out there and try. And I think the more you try, the more opportunities you have to succeed. So a little bit long way of answering your question, but curiosity is, I think, what has defined me. And if I were to write a book just about myself, I think that would have to be a theme.
First of all, thank you for sharing that. I love that. And you provided a lot of great information there. And because of that, there are some threads that I absolutely have to pull on that I'd love to explore with you. And one of them is the fact that you mentioned that you were or are introverted, and that you were early in life a big reader and clearly still are, to explore that level of curiosity. So first question for you, as I'm thinking through this, is what type of books did you really enjoy and gravitate to as a child earlier in life? What were some of those types of books and topics that you were most interested in?
Okay, if we go very early, the first thing that comes to mind is I absolutely adored the Nancy Drew series. I love the fact that she was a detective. I love the idea of solving mysteries. For a very long time, I wanted to be a lawyer because her father, Carson Drew, was an attorney. And that interest actually led to additional reading that I did when I was young. I read F. Lee Bailey's The Defense Never Rests. I read other books related to law, and so I went down that path. I really enjoy mysteries, but I also enjoy self-help books and books related to awareness. So if you ask me today what kind of books excite me, I mean, two that I'll mention right off the bat are Mindset by Carol Dweck, one of my favorite authors, and a wonderful book who talks about fixed versus growth mindsets. I love James Clear's Atomic Habits. I was, over COVID, was very interested in the topic of habits and what makes good habits, and how do you think about how you spend your time. Not surprisingly, a lot of us thought about time differently when our time was kind of in a different construct over the COVID period. So I went down that path and read a number of books on habits, and it kind of informed me as to how I should think about my time. That's a topic that we could talk about as you get older. I think you're a little bit more focused on probably one of the most scarce resources you could possibly have, which is the time. I mean, every one of us has the same number of minutes per day, but each of us spends those minutes in very different ways. And you can spend them productively, or you can spend them less productively. And I think the older you get, the more you realize that there's real value in how you think about your minutes, as many as you may have.
You are just hitting it right where it lands with me, right at my heart and right at my soul. And I talk about this from time to time on this podcast when we think about time. And you made a comment about your mother instilling in you that sense of fearlessness and just going after it, right? Not letting something get in the way. And I carry with me a coin at all times, and I'll show this to you if you've not seen this before. Not sure if you can see that, but basically the coin says you could leave life right now, and it's memento mori. And it's a reminder to me, not from a morbid perspective, but a reminder to me of the importance of time, of taking action, of being fearless in the face of whatever is in front of you, and just going after it. Because to your mother's point, what do we have to lose, right? If we don't take some sort of action, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So it's incumbent upon us to do something, and goes to what you just said, the minutes matter. Now, that may be difficult to explain to someone who's 16, 17, 18 years old, right? But as we go through the seasons of life, it becomes so much more important to us. And if I could look back, if there was something that I could have said to myself earlier in life, it would be just that. Be more fearless, take more chances, go after the things that you truly want to go after, and let nothing stop you, because there's no guarantee what's going to happen from moment to moment. What do you think about that?
I completely agree. All so true. Look, each of us has one life, and we are in control of what we do and how we behave and how we react to things. And so, the externalities could be very, very different for each of us, and they are, of course. But regulating our emotions around that, having a positive attitude as opposed to a negative attitude is a choice that each one of us can make. Being proactive and, getting out there and talking to people and meeting people is a choice each one of us can make. And none of us are here alone. There are other people out there who've experienced similar things, who are a little bit farther down the road, and we can ask people advice and help. And I fundamentally believe that people are well intentioned in general, and that people are willing to help if they're approached the right way and they're asked in the right way. And so with that belief, it's easier to reach out to someone within your close network, not necessarily a cold call, although I have made cold calls, many in my life, and they have been successful, and we could talk about that separately. But certainly making an ask of someone who you know is something that is very worth doing, because I think people are willing to help.
I would agree with that statement for sure. That's certainly been my experience as well. But I will also add, and we'll talk a bit more about this, I will also add that I was one of those who didn't want to ask for help because I felt that I could do it all, that I could be it all, that I didn't need anyone else's help. And that was a mistake. I didn't know it at the time, but I found out through experience that that was only holding me back, quite frankly. And that's one of the reasons why I felt that today's conversation with you is so vital and so important. And I know it's going to be so insightful for so many. So one other question for you, and this goes back to what you shared about your parents being immigrants. So your parents came here from Hungary.
Yes.
Was there anything about the culture of where they came from that shaped not only their lives when they came to the U.S., but also shaped how you view the world?
I'm sure there were. There's an interesting question. I hadn't given this particular question much thought until this moment. So you're cold calling me on this one. Um, Look, cultures vary. I must say, within my family, there was a strong sense of family. My mom and dad came to a brand new country with a new language. They certainly wanted to be a part of it, but they also didn't immediately assimilate. And what I mean by that is that some people come and they no longer want to speak their language, or they really want to be part of their new culture. My parents insisted upon my sister and me at home speaking Hungarian. And to the day they passed, I spoke Hungarian with my parents. So there was an affinity toward the culture, despite the fact that, we were for them, it was a new land. I mean, I was born an American. So I think of myself as very much an American. I learned how to speak English when they sent me to kindergarten in school. No one could tell that English is not my first language. That's one example of a cultural aspect. They kind of held on to that. We had friends. My parents had friends who were not just Hungarian, but also American, and also people from other countries. There was a little bit of a global perspective, which I greatly appreciated. And I never traveled as a young child, but one of the reasons that I chose to be a consultant was I thought I'd get the opportunity to travel and see more places, again, driven by curiosity. And later in my career, I was able to travel internationally and globally. And I will tell you, traveling globally opens up your mind in ways that are hard to do otherwise. I mean, I literally just came back from a international trip, and it stays with you. The people that you meet, the experiences that you have, those form like little mosaics within your mind and your personality that I think are so incredibly important. I did not have that as a child, but I had a desire for it, in part because, my parents had that experience.
Yeah, that's an amazing experience to have. Now, tying travel and the experiences that you've personally had and networking and relationship building together, had you not had the experience with relationship building, with building a network, with being able to have conversations and engage with others, would the travel aspect would that have been a very different experience for you?
I think partial, yes, in part. Look, anytime you do something for the first time, it's new. And for some people, that's scary. Um, for some people, it's exciting. For me, I very much remember my first travel experience abroad. It was a combination of those two things. Again, I'm an introvert, so I was a little bit more timid in those situations. But the more you do it and the more you have a chance to engage with others, and the more you realize that wherever you go in the world, there are certain basic things that tie us together as human beings. We care about our families. We care about our children. We care about our communities in general. And that's true whether you're based here. I mean, I'm in the New York area. You're based in the Midwest, or you're based in Egypt. It doesn't matter where you are. People do care about their families. They care about their friends. They care about their livelihood. They want to be able to make a living and to prosper. And I think those, when you see that other people experience that, I think it kind of gives you a sense that we are all bound in an important way. And it makes meeting new people easier. I mean, we could talk about ways to meet people, but one of the things that I've learned is that when I meet someone, every single person has a treasure. And it's my job to discover that jewel, that treasure within them.
Oh, I love that.
And I usually won't find that out if I'm doing all the talking. I usually will find that out if I ask thoughtful questions and then I really listen. And I think with wisdom, with age comes a little bit of wisdom. I think the wisdom that I have learned over time is to have patience with that conversation and to truly be interested in the person that I'm speaking with to uncover that treasure. And I promise you, every single person has something. Many people have many interesting treasures, but to find that and to find something where you connect, where you have some affinity, some similarity, I think that's where the magic happens in building relationships. And that's good for business as it is for personal growth and development. And I will have to say my parents did give me that. They really did try to bring people together and have situations where you could discover the treasures that others had.
That is so good, and I really appreciate the way that you frame that. So every person has a treasure. We have to be patient, obviously be interested in the other person. And as you were talking about this and mentioning the word treasure, and that it's one of the things that you try to do is to find that treasure, right? It kind of took me back to what you said earlier about being very interested in the Nancy Drew series of books, right? Being that investigator, being that person who's trying to discover something, right? Who's peeling back the layers, who's using the Socratic method and just asking good questions to really get to the heart of who the person is that's in front of you. And I love that. So let's stay on the topic of networking, because this is an area obviously that you're well known for, in addition to many other things that you're involved in as well. So let's start, if we could, with building relationships and building a meaningful and thriving power network. So I want to start with the basics first. So let's imagine that we have audience members here who are just now starting their career, or maybe they're trying to figure out what they want to do with their career. Talk about the importance of building a network, why someone should start right now if they don't already have one, and what's a good starting point. And just to give some context, when I started my corporate career, one of the mistakes that I made early on is that I wasn't intentional about building a strong network. And I was watching others in my peripheral, and I was watching them grow within that organization faster than I was. And I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was that they were doing that I wasn't doing. One of the things that I found out that they were doing, they were cultivating meaningful relationships and building that network. And I wasn't doing that. So that's a little bit of context, but let's take it from there. And I would love to get your
Sure.
perspective and insights.
Sure. I think a lot of people think about networking as important when you're looking for a job. And it certainly is. Although I would think about that period of time as a wonderful time to build your network, as opposed to thinking about looking for a job, which is kind of a different perspective. So a young person just coming out, they should be talking to as many people as possible to figure out what is it that they might like to do. And you're not going to figure that out as easily by reading a book, potentially. You might hear things on podcasts and other media. But if you talk to people and you say, tell me about yourself, tell me about your career, what would you advise a young person to do? What are the keys to success in the career that you've pursued? And there's several questions that you could ask in kind of understanding what's out there. There's a favorite graph that I have in my book. I attribute it to the person who shared it with me. But there's this pie chart of what you know in life. It's a little sliver. What you don't know in life. And the huge portion of that pie is what you don't know, you don't know. So give that some thought. What you don't know, you don't know. And honestly, that portion continues to grow for me, right? I mean, it has to, right? But I have an awareness, a little bit like what I don't know, I have greater awareness of. And what I know, in fact, very non-intuitively, kind of decreases as a portion of that pie. When you're young, you don't even know what you don't know. And that's one of the things you have to solve for. And you solve for that by talking to people. So the person who gets a job immediately out of college, first job offer, they take it right away. I would think even though it sounds like they have an advantage, I would strongly argue that they are less advantaged than the person who has to meet 100 people before they get their first job. Because the person who has to meet 100 people will learn how to network, will have a whole host of people that they can go back to over time, and will have gained incredible confidence through that process. So the person just starting their job versus the person who had to meet a ton of people to get that job, I think they're not at the same point in the starting line. You might think the opposite. Certainly the person who got the job definitely does. And then as soon as they got the job, they stop because they don't think about networking as anything other than getting the job. Networking is a lifelong process. It's so important to do the moment you start, whatever it is you're doing, whether it's your job, whether it's launching a business, whatever it is you're doing, you ought to be continuing to meet new people. So you start a brand new job, start meeting people who are your peers, your manager, other people within your firm. All of those people are going to be helpful to your career. And when you first start, people are willing to talk to you. You can say, I'm the new person. Could you spend 20 minutes with me? I will take you to coffee. Tell me about what it takes to be successful. What have you learned in this company? What are things I should know? Just a couple of simple questions. You could have a whole conversation. You should note it down. You should make sure that you follow up with people that you speak with. But if you do some of those very basic things effectively, they will pay dividends over time in terms of your career at a firm. Not only internal networking, but external networking, talking to people like yourself at other firms, hugely valuable. Talking to others who have different jobs in different industries, very important because you learn context. You're learning so much in that whole process. And one quick thing on this, most people would say, but how on earth do you have time to do that? I can barely keep my head above water in my brand new job. And to that, I say to people, if you have time to eat, you have time to meet. Don't have lunch alone. Have breakfast. Have a coffee. I understand the end of the day can be busy, so I'm not even suggesting dinners or drinks, but you can certainly do that over time. But you make a point of making it part of your day-to-day life so that it's easy, consistent, and something that you do kind of regularly.
That's so good. I like to think about it this way, similar but different words. And it's that we prioritize the things that are important. We do the things that we attach meaning and value to. So if we don't see the value in something, if we don't understand the value of building networks, both within our organization, outside our organization, then we're not going to do it, right? So we have to first understand the importance of it. I mean, it's based on my experience. We have to understand the importance of it, prioritize, and to your point, we all typically eat lunch, right? There's an opportunity there to use that time effectively. So maybe we spend a little bit less time on Netflix, a little bit less time on scrolling the internet, and find ways to maximize that time, put it to good use where we can invest in building meaningful relationships. So let me ask you this. I had mentioned a quote at the top of the show, a quote from Bob Berg. And Bob talks a lot about giving and being someone who gives first before asking for something in return, right? We've all heard about the law of reciprocity. What are your thoughts on giving first when it comes to building meaningful relationships? And kind of two pieces to this. So first, your thoughts on giving, but then also for someone who is starting off their career and who we're encouraging them to spend time meeting people, what can they give to an early relationship? What are they able to provide to the relationship?
Sure. I look, I very much believe in having a spirit of both generosity and authenticity when you're meeting new people and building relationships. I think young people are held back for a couple of reasons. One, they are afraid to make the ask. They think that people may not respond well. And to young people, I would say, don't say no to yourself. People are generally willing to help. And if they're not, it's generally not about you. It's because perhaps they're busy. Perhaps they have other things going on in their life. And older people want to pay it forward. They want to help young people. There is joy in providing that mentorship or that guidance or that advice. So if you believe that somebody would like to give to you, that helps. There's also a reluctance because just like you said, human beings do have the spirit of reciprocity. And I'm a young person. What could I possibly offer? As a young person, believe it or not, there's a ton that you offer to somebody who's more experienced. I like talking to young people because they give me a window into the future. I learn just as much talking to a young person as I do talking to a peer or somebody who's older than I am because they have a different worldview. And so I can learn in my conversations with somebody who sees life differently. I love talking with people who have had different life experiences so I can ask them about it and I can learn in that process. So there are so many ways a young person can be helpful to an older person. And I talk about this in my book. Something as simple as if a young person just graduated from college, for example, an older person's son or daughter might be going through that whole process. So they might be curious about what it is like to be a college student today. They have, they may have children or nieces or nephews or others who are going through that. That's just one example. But if you, and I always tell this anecdote, the reason I became a TEDx speaker is because a young woman, 2 years out of college, asked me to have coffee with her to give her advice. And I had coffee with her. We really connected. We connected on our mutual love of Asian food. And she invited me to go to Flushing, Queens for a lunch subsequently because that's where she grew up and it's like going to China without taking a plane. And I said, that sounds great. She followed up. We actually had that lunch and it was lovely. I'll always remember it. Several months later, she reaches out to me and said, Pat, I saw there was a call for TEDx speakers. I'd like to nominate you. Would you be interested? Never once had I mentioned TEDx to this young woman. It has always been my secret bucket list. And when she said that, I thought, oh my goodness, what a great opportunity. Yes, please nominate me. She did. I was accepted into the program. I've never prepared for anything more in my life. And it would not have happened if it weren't for this young woman, Victoria, to whom I gave advice and I had no expectations. Yet she gave me an incredible gift and a story that I continue to tell because you never know what you will receive and you never know what you can give, even if you're a young person.
Wow.
You just have to be aware. You just have to, I love sending people articles when I know what they're interested in. I love giving book suggestions or podcast suggestions. There are a whole host of ways you can be helpful to others. And probably one of the most powerful ways is by connecting others. I have experienced being connected by young people to other young people, and I am actually very willing and open to open my network to people who come to me, especially when I see that there's a huge connection there. When I meet somebody new, and I did yesterday, I met somebody new. I thought of somebody that I hadn't been in touch with for a couple of years, in fact, and I thought these two people should meet each other. And I'm making the connection. I'm giving each of them a gift And it's something that is no cost to me. In fact, they'll both be happy. The person I hadn't talked to in a while, I'm going to reconnect with as a result of this. It's a great way to bring them together and to bring me closer to each.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That is so good, and I love the information you shared about what young people can do, right? And the fact that you enjoy today connecting with and building relationships with young people, as do I, and I'm around a lot of them. There's just a youthful energy, obviously, to that segment of the population, but also the world is in front of them. And I love the way that they're able to just see what's possible. And today, realizing because the world just seems to be smaller, right? Everything is available to them in real time, that there's nothing that can stop you from achieving the great things that you want to do in life, except for yourself, right? That is the only roadblock. Everything is figure outable, and that, being around people like that just really gives me a lot of energy and a lot of hope as well. Now, in terms of connecting people, you and I were connected by someone that we know mutually, and it's so appreciated. And what I love about that, in this particular instance, that person saw something. They realized that there's a reason why you and I need to meet, why we need to have this kind of conversation. So when you're paying attention, when you're interested in other people, when you get to know someone enough to understand what their likes are, what they're interested in, maybe topics of interest, hobbies, things like that, what they've done in their career, and then you can start to pay attention to other people that are within your network and figure out a way to connect those two people together to be able to create magic. I mean, what an incredible experience to be able to participate in. I love seeing that, and thank you for sharing that. I think it's very, very powerful. So let's talk about, and you've already mentioned some suggestions here, but developing confidence and overcoming maybe some of those fears of being in a situation. Maybe it's a networking event, maybe it's a seminar, maybe it's just going up to someone at a coffee shop and just starting a conversation. Are there other suggestions that you would have for someone who just really wants to learn how to develop greater confidence within themselves?
The best way to do this is more reps. The more people you meet, the more confident you'll become. In my book, I talk about a young person who embarked on the Meet 100 People journey, a young man. And the first 10 meetings weren't that great. They were practice. And so if you're just starting out, make sure that those are not your highest value meetings. Make sure that those are meetings with people who will be patient with you, who will be kind, who understand that you're just embarking on this journey. After the first 10, you get a whole lot better. You know how to tell your story better. You know that the goal is not to impress the other person. The goal is to listen and learn. And you have to do that with a little bit of humility. And honestly, that humility is something that should continue throughout. I'm continuing to listen and learn, and I believe I do it with a sense of humility, even though I have a long career and I've probably seen more than some of the young people who I'm spending time with. But I haven't seen everything, and I haven't seen what they have seen. So, approaching a meeting with that sense of curiosity, an ability to listen, an ability to be yourself, be authentic. Don't try to be someone that you're not. If you haven't done something, it's fine to say that. If you say, I'd like to learn, most people are willing to be helpful and to provide you with that learning. So I think, again, consistency really matters in anything. And if this is important to you, then you have to say, I'm not just going to meet one new person. but maybe I'll meet one or two new people per week, and I will do it next week and the week after. And, I make this analogy, just like exercise. If I go run 10 miles today, I'm not going to get in shape. But if I run, a mile every day, or 3 times a week for 10 weeks, I will get in shape. The consistency really matters, and the commitment and the discipline around it really matters.
Love that. So you've been referencing your book, which is Meet 100 People. So why 100? Why not 200? Why not 50? Why 100?
100 is metaphorical as much as it is a specific number to shoot for. 100 is a good target. And in the book, I say it doesn't matter over what period of time you decide to do that. You shouldn't decide to do it all this week, because that would be too much. Spread it out, have it make sense. Over the course of your life, over the course of our lives, we've met more than 100 people. So it's not a magic number where you stop after that. It's much more of a big goal, something to move toward, and very often something to do better than. You're going to meet many more people. I just thought it was a good, catchy number.
So do you think, based on your experience, that is there a magic number, if you will? I know you used 100, and it was metaphorically speaking, let's say, but is there a magic number of people that we really can effectively manage, for lack of a better word, that we can follow up with, stay engaged with, really be able to develop meaningful relationships and stay connected with? Is there a number? Is it smaller than? Is it larger than 100? What have you seen that's been most effective for you?
Look, there have been studies done on this, and most of the studies say that you can actually manage anywhere from 100 to 150 people in some kind of close relationship. But it very much depends on what your career is and what you do. There are people in certain careers who manage larger numbers. They're probably not their closest inner circle, but they're thoughtful about how they maintain larger networks. And there are ways to do that. And actually, one of my favorite ways, which I learned from a young person, a young venture capitalist, who said to me, my network's too big and bulky. So what I like to do is once a month, I invite 8 people to breakfast. 8 people who don't know one another, 8 people who I wanted to touch and be in touch with. And in that process, I'm meeting 8 instead of 1 at a time. I'm giving them gifts because everybody's meeting somebody new, and I can manage through that in a much more efficient way. That's one example, right? Some people have holiday card lists that are 100. Some people have holiday card lists that are 500. Are they their closest friends? Not necessarily. But sending something out and knowing who those people are, sharing a little bit about yourself, keeps you closer. Top of mind is how I like to think of it. LinkedIn. I have a lot of followers, as I'm sure you do too. Are all those people super close friends of mine? No. But when I post things, those people have an idea of what I'm thinking of, or hopefully I'm sharing something that's of value to them, and so they might engage with it. And in that moment, think about me. And I can't tell you how many times some of those posts lead to some kind of inbound or some kind of interaction. LinkedIn tells me when people's birthdays are. I happen to really like birthdays. It's just a personal preference. I don't think about age. I just think about that as being a special day. And I love wishing people happy birthdays. So LinkedIn makes it easy. I like to write a little longer note than just happy birthday. It's meaningful to me, but I cannot imagine that someone receiving a say happy birthday, I'm thinking about you, that doesn't feel good. And it takes all of 2 seconds to do. And you're top of mind. And sometimes that results in, so great to hear from you, let's have coffee sometime. And then who knows what that leads to, right? So sometimes it's the little things that really matter, that can make a difference. Or remembering, not just somebody's birthday, but say somebody's anniversary that's close to you. Or when when somebody joins a new firm, saying congratulations. Or someone share some success, rejoicing in that success. Those are nice things to do. And my mom always said, it doesn't cost you a penny to say a kind word, to try to lift somebody's day. And I really do believe that. And why not? It feels good on the other side. Why not do that?
That is so good. So, the book that you had written, Meet 100 People, that book was published 7 years ago,
Yes,
roughly?
it was. Yes.
So, if you were to publish the book today, what would you add to the book that you didn't already have in there?
I would certainly talk about the effects of COVID and what hybrid work has done for the workforce and for opportunities to continue to network. Um, I think my message pre-COVID was very important. I think post-COVID is even more important. I'm a huge fan of technology. I love the fact that we can get on Zoom and see one another regardless of where we're sitting in the world. I think that's a incredible silver lining that has resulted from it. I love the idea that we can work hybridly, that we can go into the office, but we can also be very productive in our own homes or in wherever we're located. I think meeting people in person is super important. And I think when people do go to the office, they have to make a bigger effort than ever to interact personally with their colleagues and with others. I can't tell you how many opportunities came to me early in my career by happening to be in the lunchroom when somebody important was in the lunchroom, by happening to bump into the CEO in the elevator bank or in the hallway and having a conversation that actually was really important or an opportunity that could have been pursued as a result of that. Do not undervalue serendipity and serendipitous meetings and meeting people live, face to face, one on one. I would absolutely spend time in a revision to my book or book two on the value of in-person interactions and how you balance that with a hybrid life. Um,
That's outstanding. Thank you for sharing that. And since you're a lover of technology and exploring things from a mindset of curiosity, how has AI and other disruptive technologies impacted the world of networking? Or has it?
It's a really good question. And again, I really like technology. And I loved a post I recently saw which said AI is not going to take your job. A person using AI will likely take your job. So AI or any technology in the past or in the future is something that can be harnessed and used. Um, I think there will be ways to do better research on people that you're meeting. I'm a big believer in doing research before you meet somebody new to try to figure out who you might know in common, to try to understand if you have shared experiences. I think technology will allow us to do that better and more seamlessly. Technology will allow us to figure out if there are people we know in our location. There is already location sharing, but I think that will probably be even further enhanced, possibly with AI. So the research aspect of it, the information sharing aspect of it, I think will be improved. I'm not afraid of those things for the moment. I'm sure that you know, there are things that can happen that are unforeseen that probably are negative. But for the moment, my belief is to understand technology, experiment with it, use it, understand how it's used at work, be knowledgeable, and think of it as a tool because that's the way it was meant. Um, and you may as well use it that way and try to think of good applications for it. Having said that, in-person interactions cannot be undervalued, cannot be underestimated, because people decide on promotions. I don't think AI is going to necessarily decide on a promotion. An AI system might look at performance on employees and suggest something, but it's going to be a human being that's going to make a decision, I think, today. I mean, we'll see how the world evolves. People make sales decisions. People negotiate contracts. AI will be the tool, the background to provide information, perhaps some advice. But I actually think people will be the ones who will be the decision makers in the end. And it's good to know who those people are and
Yeah,
to have relationships set to help.
brilliant. And I'm right there with you. I am embracing it, and I have the opportunity to speak to a number of educators, especially at the university level, professors and the like. And it's interesting to hear different perspectives on whether they're embracing AI and technology. And those that do seem to be very excited about it and how it provides a great asset and tool to students. And others have their own challenges with it. And I can try to see both sides of it, but I'm also really excited about the future of AI, and it certainly has been very beneficial up to this point. So I'll be curious to see how things continue to evolve. So, Pat, as we are wrapping up our conversation, I have two things to ask. One, I would love it if you would give all of us, including me, a challenge. What is one thing that you would challenge us to do right now in this moment?
I'll give you a challenge. If you could have a conversation with anyone, an aspirational conversation with anyone who could be totally helpful to you, who would that be? And it may be more broad. Maybe it's two or three people who can be incredibly helpful to you, or that you would be incredibly curious to have a conversation with. Who would that be? And write that down. Because sometimes you have to throw it out into the universe for something to happen. And sometimes you have to think about why you want something to, to provide motivation to make it happen. So that's my challenge.
That's a great challenge. So, for all of you that are watching and listening right now, definitely take Pat up on that challenge. It's a good one, and get in the habit of doing this on a regular basis. So, Pat, along similar lines, I'm going to throw something back at you. If you were able to host a Jeffersonian type dinner where you could invite, let's say, two or three people, and they could either be alive today or no longer living. First, who are the two to three people that you would want sitting around that dinner table with you? And what is the one big topic that you would want everyone to discuss? Something to solve a bigger problem. So, who would it be, and what would the big topic be?
All right. I know who it would be. I'll give you three people.
Okay.
I will give you Melinda Gates. I will give you Taylor Swift and Michelle Obama.
Wow.
All right.
Okay.
And the topic would be, how do we help shape culture to create more unity and collaborativeness in our society? How do we try to find ways to combat divisiveness? Because I do think, there's so many different opinions out there, so many different people out there, but what helps bring people together? And I think each of these women are trying to do that in their own very special way. And I'd love their perspective on that topic.
Wow, that is so good. Thank you for sharing that. And what a diverse group of individuals to have at that table. I love that. And the big topic is so incredibly important for all of us today. So thank you for sharing that one. And Pat, I just want to thank you so very much for joining us today on Business Minds Coffee Chat. I could tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know our audience has as well. I'm so appreciative of you being open and sharing and telling us stories about growing up and just sharing of your insights and of your wisdom. So thank you, and I'm grateful for you.
Well, thank you so much, Jay. I've really enjoyed this. It's super fun conversation, and it's so nice to be exposed to your community and to your audience.
Well, thank you for that. And for all of you, thank you so very much for watching and listening. I know you know this was a great one. I would love it if you would do a quick favor. Would you please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review on Apple Podcast? Let us know one or two key takeaways from this conversation with Pat. And I'll be sure to share that information with Pat as well. And to enjoy more episodes, all you need to do is visit jscherbusinessconsulting.com, click that podcast button, and until next time, keep learning, keep growing. Make sure you pick up a copy of Meet 100 People and apply the lessons you learn. And we'll see you on the next Business Minds Coffee Chat. Take care, everybody.